haven't properly worked out consistently since COVID, and it kicked me in the backside for sure. So horrible.
Yeah, it's I've been doing better recently. The bike's helped a lot, and so I've been biking pretty regularly, which is good. So
a Peloton did you, mate, or are you just biking around the neighborhood, or what?
No, we got like it's not a Peloton, that was a little too rich for our blood, but like a cheaper bike, and then we use the Peloton app. So
Nice.
which is good, and they have some good programs. Although there's a lot of Brits on there, and I can't understand them at all. So
bloody Brits.
All right, let's get going. Hit me with the read.
When injury takes you out of the game, it's time for your team to step up. At Allina Health Orthopedics, you'll get expert care backed by a whole health system of providers with convenient locations, virtual options, and an app that gives you 24/7 access to your records, test results, and care team. You're always close to the care that you need. Schedule now at allinahealth.org/ortho.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when this finds you. Welcome to the Sound of the Loons podcast, presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. I'm Steve McPherson, and I am joined once again by Callum Williams. Cal, I see, are you enjoying some tea there? Is that what you got going on?
No, I've got a cup of coffee, Steve, because we're very busy at Minnesota United right now, aren't we? And I need all the help I can get to get me through the day. So it's funny, actually, you asked that. I've just switched over to an Arabic coffee.
Okay.
And it's like a slap in the face.
Okay.
I'm used to, and I could be talking complete nonsense here, but to my knowledge, for the most part, in the United States, the coffee comes from South America, whether it's Colombia or Guatemala or Ecuador or what have you.
Sure.
In the United Kingdom, we usually tend to get the majority of our coffee from Africa and the Middle East, and the bean is obviously different, and the taste is different because of that, obviously. And I think in the UK, I always found the coffee to be slightly bitter compared to the sweeter taste of coffee in America. So anyway, for some reason, I went and bought some Arabic coffee the other day, and just before I went up to Blaine this morning, and just now I've just had a sip of coffee, and this Arabic coffee, which I can't remember the name of, but I'd recommend it because it's good, because it is like a slap in the face, and I feel very alert and awake.
Nice. Yeah, there are some... I think it's an Ethiopian coffee that I really like called Gaioland, which I used to be able to get when I was in college at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. There was a place there that had it. And then I found that I think J&S, which is a coffee roaster in St. Paul, not all that far from Allianz Field, like down Snelling at Randolph-ish in that neighborhood is where J&S is. And sometimes they have Gaioland. And I really like that. I like that dark, like that sort of punch you in the face kind of thing. Also, I'm drinking tea. I'm the American drinking tea. I've been turned on to this blend by Harney and Sons. I don't know if you're familiar with Harney and Sons tea. I don't know anything about tea, but this is hot cinnamon spice tea, which is a black tea. So it has some caffeine with orange and clove, and it tastes basically like an atomic fireball. If you ever had one of those candies, like it's a very cinnamony, like, right. And it's been my sort of afternoon go-to, like a little lower caffeine content than coffee, but it also tastes like an atomic fireball. So it takes me right back to first grade. So.
Wow, brilliant. Well, it sounds lovely, but you'll never find me drinking that type of tea, Steve. There's one type of tea in the world that is the best, and that is, I'm not even going to call it English breakfast tea, because it's not. It's just tea. It's tea. That's it. Put a bit of milk in it, a little bit of sugar if you fancy a little treat for yourself, and you crack on, and it's great.
All right, I'm gonna bring you some of this tea. I'm just gonna bring a tea bag when we're all back in the same place, and we can try it out, because I think it's quite good. I'm not like an herbal, floral. Occasionally I'll drink mint tea at night, but like I'm not really into that. I'm not into weird flavors. But this is really, it's just like, it's a really good robust tea, and being that it's a black tea, also I feel like gives it a little more weight. So so for sure it's excellent.
That whenever we can get back to the office.
Yes. Tell me about Blaine.
So up at training
it's
today.
A suburb of Minneapolis. It's
I was going to say, do we want to go into geographical details here? Or?
I meant tell me about training at the National Sports Center in Blaine, which is where the team was and has been, and where you were today.
Yeah. It was good, Steve. I actually put something out on Twitter because I thought it was an important point to make. There's an edge to training now, and I'm not suggesting that there wasn't in the past, but there's an edge that I think the club hadn't reached yet in terms of it being as competitive and as feisty as it had certainly seen today in training. Now, because of COVID protocols, we're not allowed up every day. We're getting closer to normality in that sense, but we're allowed up twice a week, and Wednesday and Friday seem to be the main days. But there was such a competitive, feisty nature about training today. And I think it's because of the quality that the roster has at the moment. And I think every single player understands that you have to, what you guys would say, you have to bring it in training. You have to be at 100% every single day, because one bad training session could really put you out of consideration. And whilst Minnesota have had good teams in the past, it's never been as good as it is right now. And certainly with the Unu acquisition, we know it's only going to get better as well. So I think just about everybody, gave a good account of themselves today. And it's just so obvious, more than ever, Steve, it's so obvious to me that there is real legitimate competition for starting 11 spots in this team. And you can just tell everybody, and not only that, Steve, we've got a group of players, Minnesota have a group of players that think all of them individually, they should be in that starting 11. So there's such a feisty nature to training at the moment. It's ever such an entertaining watch. They finished with an 11v11 scrimmage at the end, and it was such an entertaining watch. So very much looking forward to heading back up to Blaine on Friday and getting a bit of an insight into what the team may be, because there's one person I wouldn't want to be right now, mate, and that's Adrian Heath, because he's got an abundance of quality to choose from, and he's got to be the bad guy every weekend that leaves people out. And these are people that may not be in the starting 11, but they probably deserve to be in the starting 11. But the actual fact of the matter is that there's other players that deserve to be there as well. And I don't think we've ever been in this situation before at Minnesota United. As I said before, Steve, no doubt we had a good team. Minnesota had a good team 2019, 2020. But I don't think that the club has been in this situation before, where even those that are considered sort of senior minimum players and are on the supplemental roster, even those guys are worthy of a place in the starting 11, and they know it, and the other players around them know it as well. And as I said, I don't think this team's ever been in that situation before. So it's from a competitive standpoint, it's awfully entertaining to watch training these days, and obviously that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's a thing that Adrian has talked about forever, right? Which is this idea that you need the depth to be pushing the sort of expected starting 11 all the time. And that if there's a fall off, that somebody else is ready to step up behind you. And if that person proves their spot, you're gonna have to take it from them. I don't want to speak ill of my estranged son, Francisco Calvo, but sort of as an example of this sort of like where we've come since the start of the team. By most, so if you think back to 2017, obviously, and Adrian said this too, like Ibsen was the most talented player probably on the team, like just in terms of pure level of talent. He was dedicated and everything like that. Calvo was, without a DP, prior to Darwin Quintero getting there, Calvo was sort of a high-end TAM player. So he was sort of like the young captain of the team. I don't think he ever felt threatened that he was going to get dropped, because who were you going to put in instead of Calvo, like at center back or like left back when he moved there? There really wasn't an option. And so there was never really any threat, despite, Calvo has a bunch of stuff that he's great at. And he has shortcomings as well. We still see them sometimes for Chicago. His defense is not as consistent as you want it to be. I don't think he ever felt like, well, it's like, what are you going to do? Drop me? Like there's no one else who can go in there. That's just not the case now. I mean, there's some issues with like specific depth in certain areas because of injuries. Like I don't think that Yuka Raitala would be your first choice center back right now. But we have somebody who you can put in there. And it's the thing that Adrian has long wanted. So while it's a tough job, I think it's what he wants, obviously, out of the team.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And look, Yuka Raitala again trained with the first team today, as did the abundance of other centre backs, and it's good to have somebody that's different as well, because, and Adrian said this, he briefly mentioned this heading into the RSL game, and I completely agree with it. Yuka Raitala, because he's had so much of the ball at feet over the course of his career, not just in Major League Soccer, but he played in Spain, in Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark. He's usually played at left back. And over the last sort of 10 years, when there's been more emphasis on fullbacks being involved in the final third, it's meant that he's had the ball at feet a lot more. So actually what Jukka Raitola offers Minnesota is he actually offers them a decent way of playing out of the back. And he's not one of, these typical centre-backs that you would see that just sort of boots the ball away and clears the ball away and can only defend. He can actually play a bit of football as well. And he can actually bring the ball out. And rather than, clearing his lines, he'll probably go into the deeper dropping Will Trapp and play it into his feet. Or he may very well play it into the overlapping left back or what have you, or maybe he brings the ball forward himself and can play a ball down the line and down the channel, and it's just different because Baki Dibasi is not like that. Mm-hmm. Brent Coleman is not like that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just different, so it's good to have options in certain positions, but also different options as well. And Jukka Raitola certainly offers that.
Yeah, Dibasi and Coleman, when they offer a physical presence that Jukka doesn't provide in that same way, both in terms of defending and attacking on set pieces, especially, and then just being in the box. I mean, nothing in Minnesota United soccer though is quite as thrilling as when Boxy gets the ball and starts charging up the field. It's one of my favorite moments. It's always exciting because you never know what's going to happen. Let's talk a little bit about Adrien Hunou. The new forward coming from Ligue 1. Tell me, I did a good job. Okay,
I'm not laughing at you. I'm smiling and grinning. You did a very good job, then, mate. Can you tell me where he came from?
What was that?
Can you tell me where he came from?
The team?
Yes.
Was it? I'm blanking. Was it Stade Rennais?
It's yes, but. Pronounce it properly.
Rennais.
Sorry, I don't mean to be pretentious here. No, you've done a good job there, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
Sorry, go on.
Hunou. Give me your, I think we've alluded to him before, but we didn't really want to talk. Everybody's known. Again, Adrian said this as well. It's been an open secret for months that the team has been pursuing Hunou. So, we've alluded to it before, but now we can really just talk about it because it's official and everything like that. Give me your little rundown on, what he brings and how important him coming into this team is going to be for the team this season.
This is the high-pressing attacking player that Minnesota wanted, and he's been on the discovery list for a long time now, and they've monitored him closely for upwards of several years. I think as much of it is in world football, Steve, a lot of it is about timing. I think initially when the club made the inquiry, Hunou's head was turned because I think he like a lot of people, he's seen the growth of Major League Soccer and quite fancied coming here at a good age, because I think there's been too many people that have come here in their 30s and they've said to me personally that they wish they would have come in their prime. So that's exactly what Hunou is in his prime. He will start as a centre forward for this team, and he will be the number one centre forward in this team. Hence why I said several weeks ago when the announcement of Ramon Abila coming in was made, I didn't think he was going to be the first choice, and I still stand by that. So Hunou is going to be high pressing. He's going to be a pest. He's going to be somebody who I think will give a lot more space to the players behind him. Let's say, for example, again, Minnesota are consistently playing this 4-2-3-1. The three players behind him will have a lot more space than if you play an Agudelo, if you play an Abila, if you play Robin Lod in the false nine, because of this high press. He can also play left-hand side. He can play on the right-hand side. At a push, he can also play at the 10 as well. I don't think that's something we're ever going to see, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see him out wide in certain situations as well. I wonder as well, Steve, and maybe this is something we can get into later on, if it, at some stage, if it forces Adrian Heath into a formation shift in terms of, do we see for the first time on a consistent basis, do we see two centre forwards starting for Minnesota United? So Minnesota have that depth now, so I do wonder if that's something we see in certain scenarios. But look, I saw somebody when the announcement was made. Somebody said that his goal scoring record wasn't eyebrow raising, and I agree with that. But at Rennes, he was mainly a wide player, and that's the reason why he hasn't got an abundance of goals. I think it's something, was it 36 or something in 7 seasons, or 38 or something in Ligue 1. The reason for that is because he was mainly playing as a wide player or a secondary striker, not as the main centre forward. So I think with him playing as the focal point of the attack, with Emmanuel Reynoso behind him, I think he's going to score a lot of goals here, Steve. I think this is the centre forward that Minnesota have been looking for a long time. I think you're talking, because essentially, to my knowledge, he's going to be in and around the club and available between 2 and 3 weeks. Obviously, he's got to get his visa. So I think he's got to quarantine as well. So I would say probably between 2.5, 3 weeks, he'll be ready and available to go. And I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a revelation. I think he's going to score a lot of goals here, Steve. So it's the signing that Minnesota have looked for a long time. I think everybody's got every reason to be excited.
Yeah, I had someone on Twitter, Cal, ask me about, like, is this, there's players coming up from South America. Reynoso probably fits into this mold of coming to MLS circa 22, 23, 24, looking to improve their game, make a name for themselves over the next 2 to 3 years, and then make a move to a bigger club on in Europe. And someone asked me if this was the path that Unu was going to be on, that he was, going to be brought in and then sold on later, which is certainly not impossible. But the age is really, like, 27 is really hitting that point of, like, you're looking at spending your prime here. You're looking at spending, 2-3 years. I believe it's 3 years with the team option at the end. So that 27 to sort of 29, 30 range is like, no, this is, I mean, obviously, who knows what could happen? Who knows who decides that they need him down the road? But this is less like Reynoso. This is a little more like a guy coming in at 27 to play his prime here in Minnesota. It seems like, so my first blush impression, I mean, and I've watched some highlights. I haven't done a ton of research into Unu yet, but he strikes me as having some of the same qualities as, like, Amaria, say, like, as an attacker, like Avila is sort of a bigger number 9. You've got your fast number 9s. He's got that kind of, like, a grab bag of stuff, as you're saying, right? He can play right wing, he can play left wing, he can do a little 10. He's been playing as a secondary striker. Again, if you have 2 forwards up front, maybe he plays that secondary striker role again. Is that fair, do you think, sort of in a little bit in that category?
Yeah, the best way to compare him, Steve, would be, imagine Ethan Finlay and Luis Amaria together as one player. That would be the best comparison, I would think. I don't think he is going to be. I don't think he's naturally as clinical as a forward like Amaria in front of goal. Okay. But I still think, as I said, he's going to score an abundance of goal. I wonder, Steve, is this now sort of the situation where we do start to expect sort of 15 to 20 goals a season from this type of centre forward? I wonder if we start thinking that. Is it fair to judge in his first year when he arrives a little later? I don't know, but I would expect 10 plus very, very confidently moving into the rest of this season from Unu for sure.
Yeah, it's the 2 forward thing is also interesting to me, given that at times the team has gone to the 3-5-2 in the past, playing with wing backs, and you think about some of the players who could benefit from that. I mean, as you said, Yuka Raitala, great player in terms of playing out of the back, maybe not as robust in terms of physicality. If you could pair him with 2 other more robust center backs, like if you had, Boxy, Debasi, or whoever goes in which order, and then Yuka on the left, that gives you sort of a little bit of opportunity there. Hassani Dotson in a sort of wing back role might be a possible good fit for him, I think, given that we've seen him do well at fullback and do well sometimes on the wing, if you can sort of combine those things. So there's some interesting possibilities there. And the thing is that with the 3-5-2, the team has never really had 2 forwards who could really do the job. So if this gives you that option, then it opens up, in addition to sort of the 4-3-3 as a change, it opens up that 3-5-2 as an option as well, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if there are some scenarios at Allianz Field where Adrian may feel it better to play two centre forwards. Now it would abandon his comfort in playing a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3 with the one forward at the points. But yeah, I wonder, Steve. I really do, because, and again, like I sort of insinuated earlier on, it's sort of, for the first time, Minnesota have been able to do stuff like this. That they've not really been able to have the opportunity to do this for a while. So again, it opens up possibilities. It's exciting. Let's make no mistake about it. This is the strongest team that Minnesota have ever had. And again, let's not insult people's intelligence as well, Steve. It's obvious that there's activity. They're trying to get more people in as well. Mm-hmm. So I think if they pull off the next signing that they're trying to do, again, that to me would be okay. It's obvious it's a 4-2-3-1 moving forward, but it's just, again, the strongest team that Minnesota have had by a country mile. And with this sort of roster, it does mean that expectations will be there. And I think Adrian was a little unfortunate with him saying a few weeks ago that he thought that to view the season as a success, probably have to go and win something. That was just before it was announced the Open Cup wasn't going to happen, because I think that would have been a really, really significant target for them, and a realistic target for them as well. Now, all right, it may come back, it may happen later on in the year, but all signs are suggesting that it probably won't, which is a real shame. But that statement still carries forward, I think, Steve. I'm not suggesting that Minnesota have to go and win MLS Cup to view it as a successful season, because everybody else has strengthened as well. But I think it's a real shame that the Open Cup isn't a possibility, because I think that's probably what Adrian Heath was talking about, is that's what we want to go and win, is the Open Cup and get some silverware in the locker. So we'll wait and see. But either way, times are changing for Minnesota United. This is the strongest roster they've ever had. And I think now, no excuses. This is beyond a playoff team now, Steve. This is a team that should really be top 3, top 4 in the Western Conference. Yeah,
I mean, especially as we're talking about, I mean, obviously adding Unu, and then other possibilities being added down the line, hopefully sooner rather than later. The thing that sort of got me thinking about is how, I think looking at soccer in particular, maybe more so than a lot of sports, I feel like it really demands a certain threshold of overall quality sort of across the team be reached, so that the team can sort of grow from there. Like, it's sort of, to me, it's like a curve, because of everybody having to both attack and defend, especially if you're really good, you want to be defending from that front position, from the forward position back. Like, if you can get up to a certain level, then you can get a lot of those guys can suddenly look a lot better once everything drops in. The thing I was thinking of is, the extent to which Reynoso coming in last season unlocked a lot of Kevin Molino's game. I think really made they complemented each other, and they helped each other in that way. But, Molino had sort of he was being asked to both pull the strings and be a finisher. But with Reynoso, he could sort of focus a little more on sort of attacking, running in behind, playing off of him. And then now, without Molino right now, the way the team is set up, we're sort of seeing Reynoso get mobbed by defenders, because there isn't some other guy. There's not that 1A guy right now who can take some of that attention away. And so it's sort of like you need a certain threshold. I can't remember the critical mass. That was the word I was thinking of. A critical mass of like talent, sort of front to back. And then, like, once you reach that, then you can really build off of that. I think that's what you really saw last season down the stretch with that attacking four. Sort of once they were all hitting, it was like they multiplied each other's abilities, and it made for some really fun soccer. So I'm hoping that the addition of Unu and other additions that are coming down the line, that is, I mean, I think you're right. It's the most talented team, but like, as those things mesh, it sort of suddenly you're like, oh, this team looks really good, which, let's be honest, has not looked great so far.
I think they've looked fine, Steve. It's just
right. Okay. Results. I should say, I was going to get into this as well. You're right. Moment to moment, fine, except for the moments when something really bad happened. But it's not quite there yet.
Yeah. And look, so far, it's been an opening portion of the season that's been full of frustration, and I get it. I understand it. There were so many similarities from this RSL game to the Seattle game to open the season, and again, I think Minnesota did just about everything they could. I think if there is a fit and ready Ramon Abila on the field, I think Minnesota win that game comfortably because, as I've said before, Steve, in those tight spaces where if you go back and look at the game, a lot of those chances came from inside the box. And I know a handful came from outside of it, but the majority came from inside the 18-yard box. And that's where Abila thrives. Minnesota were able to get the ball up the field quite efficiently without having, obviously Agudelo played up front, but I don't think he allowed them to play a high press a little more naturally, but he wasn't as effective as I expected. And look, it's fine. It's his first game, getting used to things. I understand it's early in the season, but I think a fit and if Minnesota had the best version of Ramon Abila on Saturday, I think they win that RSL game quite comfortably. That wasn't the case, and Minnesota have to move on. Again, I think individual errors have cost them. No problem saying. I thought Chase Gasper had a torrid time. Mm-hmm. I don't think Joma Metania covered himself in glory either. I think Jukka Raitala looked a little shaky from time to time. I thought for the most part he was okay, but it just wasn't a great defensive display. And the unit themselves I thought were okay overall, but it was defensive errors and individual errors that cost the team a game. And for Real Salt Lake to break the way they did in the first goal, I thought was I thought it was inexcusable. You can't be that discombobulated to allow a team like that to break in the way that they did. So as I said, I've not seen every day in training yet, Steve, but I would assume they've worked on that and shape and structure because that can't happen again. And for the second one, it's a moment where Chase Gasper gets caught in two minds, tries to tow it back into the centre half partner. He and Raitala are not on the same wavelength, and obviously it feeds it to Rubin, who squares it over to Anderson Julio, who had quite an MLS debut. So just individual mistakes right now are what are costing Minnesota United. But ultimately, Stephen, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not being a homer. People know me by now. That's not how I operate. I think it's okay. I think it's fine. There have been plenty of signs to suggest that Minnesota will be okay. They're creating chances. What was it? 23 shots against Real Salt Lake. Chances are being created. They just need the players that they've brought in now to get fit, get ready, get sharp. Once they are, I see no problem for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I think that, talking about that depth thing, there's a couple places where those injuries, again, already right now are kind of hitting in this very acute way, not a very general way. It's just one of those things where you would think that, the Iko Para situation is still unresolved. So you have a center back on the roster who's not playing. Coleman did not cover himself in glory, to borrow your term, in the opener. And so you were looking for other options. So Jukka Raitala came in. If you had Dabasi, you'd probably start looking at Raitala at left back right now, based on Chase Gasper's, performance and what else you could maybe get out of that position. But you don't have that. You need Jukka for that center back position right now. There hasn't been a lot of production from the forward position yet. I thought Juan Agudelo was fine. Maybe not, but didn't deliver everything you needed, which puts more pressure on the wingers, which means there's more pressure on them going forward, which means they can let off going back. It's just, again, it's one of those things where all the pieces interlocking sometimes. Right now, it's not quite happening. I think that we've talked about expected goals before on this podcast, and it's one of those things that is basically trying to measure those chances. Essentially, when you're looking at any shot a player is taking, how good of a chance is it that it goes in, and are they making those chances? If you look at those things for the last couple games, again, this is a small sample size, but the expected goals in the opener were 2.52 for the Sounders and 1.02 for Minnesota. So it's a little more like a 3-1 or 2-1 game based on the quality of chances that were being taken. We saw that, going down 2 goals, you start throwing guys forward, you start giving up chances. That's how it turns into a 4-0 game. against RSL, expected goals from Minnesota was 1.82 and 1.51 for RSL. So a lot closer to like a 2-2 game or a 2-1 game, maybe even in the Loons' favor based on that. Again, it's like there's chances they're not being finished. RSL didn't really mess anything up. Minnesota messed a couple things up and paid dearly for it. It's like those mistakes were colossal and they paid for them. RSL didn't really have to be spectacular. They could waste time once they were in the lead. They could sort of roll around on the ground. Choa. And then, like that's all she wrote there. So again, I would agree with you. I don't think it's not panic. It's not panic time. It's not time to hit the panic button at all.
No, we're 2 games in, Steve. It's fine. It's okay. But it's interesting you bring up Reiter at left back. I was thinking about this last night. Because, look, the first 2 games, Chase Gasper has not delivered at the level we know he can. And I'm sure he will admit that as well. But I wonder if Minnesota were to play Yuka Reiter at left back, it would be an option. And I could see it being okay. But I think with the way that Adrian operates on the fullbacks, I'm not sure I could see Reiter getting up and down as quickly as would need be. Thus meaning, I think a lot of the pressure would fall on Metanier's shoulders. I think that makes Minnesota too predictable then, just having to go down one side. They could do it, they could pull it off, I'm sure, but I think it makes Minnesota too predictable. So I'm sure at some stage, for example, if there is an injury to the left back, it wouldn't surprise me if Reiter slots in there at some stage, but I don't think it's the best version of Minnesota if that ever happens.
Yeah, I less tactically. I was thinking a bit more from the perspective of you want to make sure nobody's too comfy in their position. Sure. So to be able to say like, hey, we're going to go with this guy, this game, and then it's motivation, right? It's sort of like making sure everybody's, and again, Chase is one of those guys that hardly needs, he's always going 100 miles an hour. So, and again, I think he's going to get right. It's just, he didn't have a great game. That's okay. I think, all right, we're going to move on. I'm going to leave that there. We're going to move on. When injury takes you out of the game, it's time for your team to step up. At Allina Health Orthopedics, you'll get expert care backed by a whole health system of providers with convenient locations, virtual options, and an app that gives you 24/7 access to your records, test results, and care team. You're always close to the care you need. Schedule now at allinahealth.org/ortho. All right, let's just spend the last little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about Austin FC, which is interesting. I had to work up First Touches, which is it's an article we publish. It goes into the game notes as terms of matchup quick facts, like the historical matchup between 2 teams. There's no history. Like I don't, it's like I'm looking at the records of, like I can look at the players on Austin FC and what they've done against Minnesota United, but like, no, we haven't played Austin before. So it's an interesting time. I love those jerseys. I really like the black and green. I like Austin as a city. It's the barbecue is incredible. I know I've talked about it before on this show. So I'm in for Austin. Let's talk a little bit about, well, first of all, have you gotten to watch much of Austin so far beyond sort of packages or highlights or like what's come out of the game so far? Did you get to actually check out any of the games?
Yeah, I watched on what day was today? Wednesday, Monday afternoon. I watched back their game against Colorado, and it was exactly what I expected. It's exactly what I expect to see at Allianz Field on Saturday as well, Steve. I think they're going to be a fluid, pressing, counter-attacking team that will probably be a little more direct than the attacking players will want. But I expect a really difficult challenge, Steve. I think the fact that this is an expansion team, just remove that immediately. I don't think this is built like an expansion team. Mm-hmm. I think they have frailties defensively that Minnesota can get at for sure. Ben Sweat, the left back, has just done his ACL, so he obviously won't be available. So I'm interested to see what happens there. In terms of what they do and who they bring in, Kolmanic, you would assume the Eastern European left back would more than likely deputise. But I'm interested to see in terms of individuals, Steve, who starts for them, because I would be surprised if they made any wholesale changes bar the injury. Just because they look so organised, they looked quite intuitive. They look quite disciplined away on the roads with the 4-3-3 that they've gone with. The only major one for me, Steve, is that do they make room for Thomas Pochettino, who was a late scratch, was due to start in Colorado, but there was a registration issue of some sort, which I was told they're trying to figure out as quickly as they can. Because he, from an attacking point of view, Steve, he's the star. He's a really top player, as well as Cecilio Dominguez. We can't brush him aside. He's a really good player. I've been a big fan of him since his Club America days. He was on loan at Guarani, Paraguay last year. He's a good player. And this is where what I'm talking about when I say they're a counter-attacking team, and I expect them to be high pressing because of him, basically. And Danny Houston, I'm assuming, will start at top as well. He will press the Loons back line. So the fact they're an expansion team, Steve, as I said, I would push that aside straight away. I think this is going to be a much more difficult task than people would originally assume when you mention expansion team. I think they're quite well coached. They're organised. I'm just intrigued to see, and I say this with all due respect, Steve, going away to Colorado as opposed to going away to Minnesota, they're two very different challenges. So I wonder, is Josh Wolf, the head coach of Austin FC, going to come to Allianz Field and sit a little deeper? Or are they going to go for it? Are they going to pick their moments to go for it, as they did against Colorado? So I don't know, Steve. I'm very interested. As I said, the biggest question for me is whether or not Thomas Pochettino will start. The rest of them, I expect it to be fairly similar. So they've got a good team, Steve. Let's just admit this is going to be a very difficult task for Minnesota United.
Yeah, absolutely, Cal. There's obviously Pochettino changes the equation a lot for them. Not a huge fall off to Diego Fagundes, though, who had quite a good game. He's an experienced vet. He knows the ins and outs. He knows what to do. That lack of experience that's one of those things that losing Ben Sweat is tough. Kalmanich has seemed good, but he's also, I think he's 21 or something like that. And some other defenders, Matt Beasler is 34. He was not in the game. I think his wife was having a child perhaps, and he didn't play, but I don't know if he's back with the team or what the story is, but leaning on there's again, I'm all about thresholds and critical masses this week, but you sort of need a threshold of experience in that defensive back line to just sort of be able to hold it together. And if you sort of lose something there, it can be really bad. They seemed, vulnerable on set pieces, which seems like a trend with expansion sides. It always seems to be the case, even with good teams, that sometimes the set piece defense is tough. Here's my theory. My theory is that you can't really feel your way into set piece defense the way you can in the run of play. I think that a set piece defense is really all the guys know each other and they know where they're supposed to be. And it's a minute where everybody has to do the right thing at the same time. And in terms of the run of play defensively, a guy can just work his butt off and get back there. There's sort of, you can cover for guys, things like that. It sort of feel like set piece defense is one of those things that always seems to dog expansion teams for some reason, Cal.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it comes down to organisation, Steve. I put out yesterday, I was watching Toronto FC in the Champions League. I thought it was one of the most awful performances from a set-piece point of view I've ever seen. And one or two people chirped back and said, well, what about Cincinnati? I said, yeah, I know Cincinnati and New York City weren't great from a defensive point of view either, but I just thought Toronto were dreadful. And Cruz Azul didn't score from every set piece, but that doesn't mean that Toronto weren't unorganised. And I thought they were so bad, Steve, because a lot of it came from this zonal marking thing. Mm-hmm. And I just, I understand zonal marking from time to time in certain situations, but not when you're defending a set piece. You tell me this, Steve. When was the last time you saw a zone score a goal?
Right.
Yeah. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. So. I agree with your theory that, set pieces can be an issue for expansion teams for sure. But if you catch a team on an off day, it can be a problem for just about any team in world football. And especially if you rattle them early doors as well. Like I said, I think Toronto got smashed by Cruz Azul last night in the Champions League. And it's a steep mountain for them to climb now. But, look, Minnesota, I think set pieces have been I think they've been okay for them, particularly last year. obviously in 2019 they had the presence of Opara to push in there. Michael Boxall was a bit of a pest as well when he went forwards. So yeah, no doubt Minnesota have options and are a threat from set pieces. But I think I think both teams, Steve, on Saturday will look to press and look to counter. Here's the one thing I am expecting on Saturday, Steve. I am really expecting it to be end to end and really thoroughly entertaining. But the question is that will Austin come in and sit a little deeper for the opening 30 minutes and look to frustrate and maybe even dictate with Alex Ring dropping a little deeper? Or will they go for it? And will it be end to end throughout the 90? And all of us will be extremely entertained. So I don't know, Steve. I'm really intrigued with this one because I would go as far as saying probably for the first time in a long time, Austin FC are one of the more intriguing expansion teams coming into the league because they've invested quite well. Not invested as much as they could have. They could have spent a lot more money, Steve, but I think they're just settling in and they're just waiting to see what's perhaps available in the summer, to my knowledge. But I think they're a good team, Steve, and I'm really, really thinking this is going to be nowhere near as easy as Minnesota fans may very well think, just because of the tag of expansion team.
Yeah, for sure. And all their goals against Colorado, in the second half came in transition or off turnovers, as you said, Cal, and that's got to be, worrying for Minnesota based on how the team has performed in the first two games. Just, like those scrambles have been sort of where they've made those mistakes and not been able to contain counterattacks. So, on the other side, I think that like if you're a player, you're like, well, I want to step up to that challenge. You want to try to fix those problems, and this is a chance to do that because this is going to be a team that's going to counter you. So it's going to be fun. I think that like you said, it's likely to be an end-to-end game, and that's always more fun to watch than when they're just stuck in the middle. I hate those games.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I'm just you quite rightly said there. It's all about the transition for me for both teams. And I just wonder who's going to be brave enough. I think that's what it'll come down to, particularly in the opening sort of 20, 30 minutes. Who's brave enough to press high? Who's going to expose themselves a little bit, So as I said, Steve, several times now, I'm just excited. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. But the one thing is for sure, whoever starts up front for Minnesota has to put the chances away. From a lineup perspective, Steve, I don't know what to expect from Minnesota now. I mean, I didn't think Jan Gregus was particularly great against RSL. Do we see Hassani Dotson come in to the 11? I wonder, will Robin Lurd move to the right-hand side? Again, I don't expect that to change. Lurd and Finlay either side of Reynoso. We have to wait and see in terms of, how fit Raman Avila is. Because if he's not fit from the start, then obviously Agudelo, we're assuming Agudelo will start. That seems to be on paper the obvious choice. But if that's the case, then Agudelo knows when these chances come his way that he has to put the chances away, and the rest can be said for everybody else as well. I'm not putting blame on Agudelo at all because he didn't have. I don't remember him having any clear-cut chances against RSL, but there were real chances for the players that were around him, in particular Robin Lurd and Ethan Finlay. So Minnesota have to start putting these chances away, Steve, because in this league now it's becoming a league where, as we fully saw on Saturday and arguably against the Sounders as well, you don't put your chances away, you will be punished.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for the 140th Sound of the Loons podcast presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. Be sure to leave us a nice review on iTunes or at the very least a 5-star rating, and follow the team on Twitter at MNUFC. You can follow Cal at CalWilliamsCom and me at Steve Entris. Apologies, as always, to Richard Wagner. And remember, there's only one person in this whole world like you, and people can like you exactly